missed your Korean lesson. You know what happens now.
Two choices, Spanish or vanish.
Just want you to let my parents out of that trunk.
We've all seen the ads. Duolingo's brilliant marketing, and people absolutely love it in the comments section, which might be why 17 million people use it to study Japanese, and why I constantly hear people say, it's the best resource for learning Japanese. As someone who painstakingly self-studied Japanese to fluency, I decided to try Duolingo for 100 days to see if it really is the best resource for new learners. And honestly, it's pretty bad. In this video, I'll break down the 4 big reasons why Duolingo's approach to learning Japanese doesn't work, including its biggest flaw and how it can even ruin your Japanese permanently. Recognizing these flaws will help you understand how to truly level up your Japanese.
Okay, we got Duolingo downloaded, baby. Day 1. The design is chef's kiss.
Using Duolingo is simple. All you do is click a circle to start a lesson, do around 10 to 15 mostly multiple choice questions, and you're done. It's gamified with beautiful design, XP to compete with others, and of course, the famous streak system, which is great for building a daily study habit. But even with that initial amazement, I already began to see the problems after I finished the first unit.
Just finished unit 1 and I learned 6 words total. Let's go. Okay, but it is unit 1, so maybe they're just starting off slowly.
But that wasn't really the case. Here's the total content I learned from each unit. If you add it up and divide by the 100 days it took, it's only a whopping 1 new word or letter per day, if you round up. Compare this to the number of words you need to pass each level of the Japanese language proficiency test. To get N3, which is considered basic conversational fluency, you need to know about 3,000 words, which at 1 new word a day would take about 8 years. For N1, which is true everyday fluency, you need to know 10,000 words, which would take about 27 years with Duolingo. A newborn baby could get a PhD in 27 years. This is at a pace of 1 to 2 lessons a day, and 1 lesson is all you need to satisfy the streak counter, so the average person will feel accomplished and stop. The key lesson being, Duolingo is slow, so you need to keep track of your own study pace. For example, try aiming for around 5 new words a day. Then your timeline looks a lot more reasonable. And I know what you're thinking.
Okay, Duolingo's slow, but just do more lessons, silly.
You don't think I thought of that? Duolingo problem number 2. The problem with just studying more words a day is that it's easier to forget them. That's why a good review system is critical. But Duolingo ain't got one. The best way for your brain to create long-term memory is through something called the spaced repetition system, or SRS. Normally what happens is you learn something new, like a new Japanese word, and as we all know, we're gonna forget it. But with SRS, you're tested on this word right as you're about to forget it. This is the best timing for your brain to create long-term memory. A good SRS will calculate the ideal review time for each word. If we can't quite remember a word, the next review test will come sooner. If we did remember it, the next review test will be later. Duolingo does have an SRS, but it has 2 fatal flaws. 1. The review timing for words isn't individually calculated. I found that Duolingo just makes you review an entire unit as a whole. This means you'll review a lot of words you don't need to, and miss out on words that you should review but are in other units. And 2, the way they test you is bad. Studies show strong evidence that recall is better than recognition for review. For example, it's much better for your memory to see the word gohan and have to remember what it means.
Rice.
Whereas Duolingo does recognition, where they'll show you the word gohan but give you multiple choice options like rice, water, or sushi. It's a lot easier to pick from multiple choice so you feel accomplished, gooding, but it's not actually great for long-term memory, so you're more likely to forget. This is the sad part about Duolingo. You're tricked into thinking you're accomplishing a lot, but in reality, your active vocab isn't growing as much as you think it is. The key lesson being, Duolingo doesn't have proper review, so use SRS to review individual words when most appropriate, and force yourself to recall the meanings when testing yourself. But this is nothing compared to the worst flaw of Duolingo. Grammar is critical to learning a language as an adult, but Duolingo just doesn't teach it well. For example, in Unit 2, the only grammar they taught was that there's no or the in Japanese. Then they just had you regurgitate a bunch of random sentences like yasashii shato kakkoi bengoshi. Then in Unit 3, the only grammar they taught was that san is added to names to show respect, like Naomi-san or Ken-san. These points are good to know, but they aren't actually teaching you how to make sentences. And I've heard many people say,
Well, we didn't need grammar to learn our native language. We just picked it up.
but your brain is not as flexible as a child's anymore. Research shows that around 7 years old is the critical point, the point at which implicit or natural language learning begins to fade. Adults excel more explicit language learning, which is rule-based learning, like through grammar and clear instruction. Allow me to illustrate. There was a study on 60 Hungarian immigrants in the United States who had been living there for over 10 years. The researchers tested how well they acquired English as a second language, and they were scored out of 200. No surprise, those who immigrated as kids destroyed those who immigrated as adults. Those who came to the US between the ages of 0 and 16 had an average score of over 190, whereas the adult immigrants only had around 145. But the researchers were interested in these few adult learners who scored similarly to the child learners. What was their secret? They found that these top-performing adults used analytical, problem-solving abilities because the implicit learning mechanisms of the child are no longer available or accessible. Problem-solving versus natural language learning. What's the difference? For example, if you're a native English speaker, you probably didn't know there's actually a rule for adjective order. Like we say, a beautiful, big, round ball. Whereas a round, big, beautiful ball sounds kind of weird to us. We were never taught this rule, but we just naturally picked it up. But I've had non-native English friends say adjective order doesn't feel natural to them. For them, it's better to study this rule, which is problem solving the grammar so they understand it. The same goes for us learning Japanese. The key lesson being, Duolingo has poor grammar lessons. So if you're at least 16 or older, have a teacher or resource explain the grammar and use your problem solving skills to understand how it works. Please, do not rely on just picking it up naturally. But this final problem is why Duolingo won't just not get you fluent, but may even ruin your Japanese permanently. You would think that practicing speaking with an app would be a great way to get better at pronunciation because it's not as embarrassing as screwing up in front of people. But you would actually be making it worse. Duolingo doesn't have a good feedback system for speaking. I could mess with my pronunciation and it would still often mark it as correct.
先生と弁護士
先生と弁護士先生と弁護士
優しい医者です。
優しい医者です。優しい医者です。What?
This will ingrain terrible speaking habits, leading to a phenomenon known as fossilization. When we do something new, like pronounce bengoshi as bengoshi, it creates a new neural path in our brain. The more we say it, bengoshi, 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 the more reinforced that neural path becomes, making it easier for our brain to use it. Even if we're told later on, no, it's bengoshi, bengoshi. That correct neural path is so weak compared to the old habit that we just end up returning to our old ways. That's why it's called fossilization. The old speaking habit is fossilized long-term in your brain. To avoid this, we need explicit instruction early in the learning process. This means having an actual teacher or friend listen to your terrible Japanese and correct it before it becomes fossilized. It's embarrassing to be corrected, but it's the best way to avoid sounding like this.
男ならハンバーガー、ピッツァ、フライチキンとか食べないとダメだろ。人生短い男なら肉。
The key lesson being, Duolingo doesn't have good speaking supervision, so don't trust its feedback. Instead, have a person correct your pronunciation to avoid fossilization of bad habits.
100 days. I really love the design and ease of use, and it could be a great way to build a daily study habit. But for all these critical issues, I can't recommend using Duolingo to learn Japanese. If you want to know how I actually recommend learning Japanese from nothing like I did, check out this video. And what do you think? Are 17 million people actually just getting bamboozled by genius marketing? Or am I being too harsh on Duolingo? Until next time, guys, Tokuyuu out!